Don't tell anyone I'm your real mom. It's not time yet. I read that message 3 times on Mia's phone, willing the words to change. My fingers shook so hard I nearly dropped it. The air grew thick, suffocating. 16 years of memories ripped through my mind, tearing everything apart. I looked up. Chris, my son, stood frozen in the living room doorway, a raw mix of guilt and fear etched on his face. He knew. Always knew. Why? I finally managed, my voice a thin, shaky thread. Chris dropped his gaze, and that was all the confirmation I needed. Mia. The girl I'd cradled since she was a newborn. The child I'd walked home from school every day. The teenager I'd scrimped for months to buy a silver necklace for. She wasn't Chris and Amanda's daughter. She was my niece Jessica's. Amanda didn't want to, he murmured, barely audible. She was afraid you'd treat Mia differently. Differently. Tears carved hot paths down my wrinkled cheeks. I've loved her like my own granddaughter since the moment I first laid eyes on her. Amanda materialized from the kitchen. Her gaze, sharp and knowing, cut from the phone clutched in my hand to Chris's crumpled face. She understood. You had no right, she stated, her voice a chill I'd never heard. This is our business. Your business? My voice cracked, rising an octave. We're talking about my granddaughter. She's not your granddaughter. Not really. Amanda's words were poisoned darts, landing with brutal precision. The ensuing silence roared. Chris seemed to physically shrink, folding in on himself. I think it's best if you go, Mom, he finally choked out. Mia's confused. She just found out everything. We need space. I stumbled out of that house, lost in a waking nightmare. The necklace, months of careful savings, lay forgotten on their coffee table. The sky was bleeding to dark by the time I reached my own doorstep. Just me, my spiraling thoughts, and the raw, permanent ache in my chest. You're probably wondering how it all came to this. How a devoted grandma became a nobody to the granddaughter she'd poured 16 years of love into. How a secret, buried for so long, could unravel bonds I'd believed were woven into my very soul. It began 16 years ago. Chris called, breathless, saying Amanda had delivered a healthy baby girl. I remember flying to the hospital, my heart bursting. Robert, my husband, had passed 5 years prior. This news was a lifeline, sunshine after a long, dark storm. When I first saw Mia, swaddled in pink in the nursery, a strange flicker caught me. I looked at that tiny face and saw faint resemblances that weren't Chris's or Amanda's. I pushed it down. Babies change so much in those first few months, I told myself. Amanda had always kept me at arm's length. From the moment she started dating Chris, I felt it, a subtle, constant distance. I'd tried everything, Sunday dinners, offers of help, respecting her boundaries. Nothing seemed to bridge the gap. When Mia was born, I'd hoped she'd be our common ground. Instead, it pushed us further apart. I can watch her while you're at work, I offered when Amanda had to return to her law firm. She hesitated. Chris, sensing it, stepped in. That'd be wonderful, Mom. We don't trust nannies, and daycare's a few months off. And just like that, I became Mia's second mother. Every morning, Chris dropped her at my house before work. I mixed bottles, changed diapers, hummed her to sleep. When she wobbled into walking, I'd guide her shaky steps through my backyard. Her first word? Grandma. Even before Mommy, a detail that, even then, I noticed seemed to curdle something in Amanda. Years blurred into a lifetime. Mia blossomed into a sweet, endlessly curious girl, At 5, she was my pint-sized baking assistant, flour dusting her nose as her laughter lit up my kitchen. By 7, she'd read me bedtime stories during her weekend sleepovers. At 10, she'd whisper her most sacred secrets. The boy who pulled her pigtails, the unfair teacher, her fervent dream of becoming a vet. "Grandma Susan," she'd murmur, tucked into my bed as I brushed her hair. "You're my best friend." Through it all, nothing struck me as odd in their family dynamic, beyond Amanda's usual guardedness. Jessica, my niece, was a ghost at family gatherings. I had a faint memory of her traveling for almost a year around the time Mia was born. Studying in Europe, they'd said. She came back pale, quieter, moved out of state shortly after. The rare times our paths crossed at reunions, she barely met Mia's gaze. When Mia turned 14, a shift began. Abruptly, weekends at my house were out. Our plans evaporated with last-minute cancellations. When we did manage to meet, her face was perpetually bathed in the glow of her phone. "Just adolescence," my knitting circle friends would cluck. "They all go through it. It'll pass." But this felt different, a calculated distancing. Amanda began scheduling extra activities on my days. Chris's excuses for canceling our Sunday dinners grew increasingly elaborate. Then came her sweet 16. I'd saved for months, penny by careful penny, for that silver heart necklace. Inside, a tiny photo. Us at 5, on the beach. Grins wide, ice cream dripping down our fingers. I called Chris, telling him I was coming over. "Today's not a good day, Mom," he said, his voice strained. "It's her birthday, Chris. I just want to drop off her present." A long beat of silence. Then, "All right, but don't stay." The house was eerily quiet when I arrived, not the usual birthday buzz. Mia sat hunched in the living room, lost in her phone, barely registering my entrance. Amanda met me with that brittle, plastered-on smile, then vanished into the kitchen, as if my presence was simply too much to bear. I sat beside Mia, extending the gift wrapped in silver paper and blue ribbon. Her favorite. "You didn't have to, Grandma," she mumbled. Not even a flicker of interest, her gaze still fixed on the screen. "It's special," I offered, swallowing my disappointment. "Something to remember me by." That's when she finally looked at me, her eyes flat, utterly devoid of warmth, a coldness I'd never witnessed. "Look, Grandma, you don't need to keep giving me things. You're nobody to me, okay? Just my mom's mom." The words landed like a physical blow. The breath hitched in my throat. "Nobody? Mia? After everything?" "You always throw that in my face," she snapped, her voice laced with bitterness. "Like I asked for it." Chris walked in then, taking in my ashen face. Before I could even begin to explain, Mia shot up, a furious teenager, and stalked off to her room, leaving her phone vibrating on the couch. The screen flared, revealing the message that fractured everything. "Don't tell anyone I'm your real mom. It's not time yet." The days after the bomb dropped blurred into a cycle of weeping and rifling through old photo albums. I studied Mia's baby pictures, her childhood smiles, desperate to unearth the clues I'd missed. How could I not have seen the undeniable echo of Jessica in her features? How had I not questioned my niece's conveniently timed trip? How had I been so monumentally, tragically blind? But more than the raw shock of the truth, it was the crushing distance that gutted me. 16 years of a love I thought was boundless, tossed aside. To Mia, I was now a ghost. To Amanda, always an unwelcome shadow. To Chris, just another complication. On the third night, Sleep was a stranger. At 3 a.m. I crept to my study, pulled out paper and pen. The words poured out, a torrent of grief and love, staining the page as my tears blurred the ink. I didn't mention the secret. Instead, I wove a tapestry of her childhood. Shared giggles, whispered confidences, sun-drenched afternoons. I simply wrote that, come what may, my love for her was an unshakable bedrock. She would always, always be my granddaughter, heart and soul. By the time I finished, the first weak light of dawn was breaking. I folded the letter, slipped it into an envelope, scrawled her name. After a rushed coffee, I drove to their house, my stomach churning, and left it in their mailbox. I went home, and I waited. One day bled into the next. My phone remained a tomb. No message, no visit. On the third morning, as I watered my plants, the doorbell chimed. My heart leaped, a frantic bird in my chest. Her? Had she read it? My hands trembling, I opened the door. Not Mia, the mailman, a large envelope in his hand. Mrs. Susan Evans, signature required. I signed, my mind a blank, then closed the door. The envelope bore Amanda's law firm letterhead. Inside, a formal document, and a chilling handwritten note. Susan, we ask that you respect our decision to limit your contact with Mia during this delicate time. Attached is a formal notification requesting you not attempt direct communication with her until she is emotionally prepared. Amanda and Chris. My knees buckled. I sank onto the nearest chair. A formal notification? As if I were a danger to my own granddaughter? It hit me then. The letter. My heart poured onto the page. It never reached her. Amanda. Of course, intercepted. Just like she'd intercepted everything that threatened her carefully constructed world. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over Chris's number. I wanted to rage, to demand answers. But a deeper instinct stopped me. This wasn't a battle to be won with fire. If I had any hope of winning Mia back, it would be with patience, with love. The very tools I'd used to shape her, day by day for 16 years. I folded the legal notice, tucked it into a drawer. Then, back at my desk, I began to write again. Not to Mia this time, to myself. A letter for all the unanswered questions, the raw hurts, the gnawing fears. And as the pen scratched across the paper, a quiet certainty solidified within me. Family wasn't just blood. It was choice, love, showing up. And I would choose to keep loving that girl, even if she believed I was a stranger. Because to me, she would always be irreplaceable. What I didn't grasp then was how many more layers this truth held. Or that the road to winning her back would be far more agonizing and astonishing than I could ever imagine. The following week, my house was a tomb. The phone remained stubbornly silent. I spent hours at the living room table poring over old photographs, searching Mia's infant features for the echoes of Jessica I'd somehow missed. Now they screamed at me, the subtle curve of her eyes, the delicate point of her chin, even the way her brow would furrow in concentration. One especially heavy afternoon, as I meticulously arranged the photos, hoping to impose order on my fractured thoughts, the doorbell chimed. My heart slammed against my ribs. I smoothed my hair, rushed to the door, trying to rein in the desperate hope that surged through me. It was Brenda, my neighbor of nearly 2 decades. Susan, you missed knitting yesterday. We were worried sick. Only then did I realize the days had blurred. Thursday knitting, a sacred ritual for over 10 years, had simply vanished from my mind. I'm so sorry, Brenda. I've been a bit lost. She walked in uninvited, as true friends do. Her gaze swept over the scattered photos, then settled on my swollen, tear-ravaged face. What happened? Is it Mia? And I just shattered. The story tumbled out between ragged sobs as Brenda held me tight. The revelation, the brutal rejection, the humiliating legal letter. When I finished, she cradled my hands in hers. Susan, remember when my Jason went through his rebellious phase? I thought I'd lost him forever. I nodded, remembering the raw pain. Jason, caught in the undertow of drugs, a runaway, a wound that had festered in Brenda's heart for years. Today he's a doctor, married, 2 beautiful grandkids. You know why? Because I never gave up, not even when he gave up on himself. But it's different, Brenda. Jason's your biological son. And Mia's your granddaughter of the heart. You think that bond counts for less? Her words settled deep within me long after she left. That night, for the first time in days, I slept without weeping. The next morning, I awoke with a flicker of an idea. If direct contact with Mia was a fortress, perhaps understanding was the key. I picked up the phone, dialing a number I rarely touched. Hello? A cautious voice on the other end. Jessica. It's Aunt Susan. A heavy, stunned silence hung in the air before she finally replied. Aunt Susan, how are you? We need to talk, Jessica, in person. Another pause, drawn out. It's about Mia, isn't it? Her voice, barely a whisper, trembled. Yes. I point. I can come over tomorrow. Coffee steamed gently in our mugs as I watched Jessica across the table. At 36, my niece retained her delicate beauty, but her eyes held a new, pervasive sadness I'd never seen. You know, don't you? She finally murmured, breaking the quiet. That Mia is your biological daughter? Yes, I just found out. Jessica dropped her gaze to her cup. How, Jessica? Why the secrecy? She inhaled deeply, fortifying herself. I was 19, Aunt Susan, second year of college when I found out I was pregnant. The father. He disappeared the moment I told him. My parents would have been utterly devastated. I pictured my brother and his wife, Jessica's parents, fiercely devout Catholics, rigidly conservative. I considered every option, she went on. But I just couldn't. I couldn't. Her voice frayed. Why didn't you come to me? I was terrified of shaming everyone. Then Amanda and Chris. They offered a way out. A way out? They'd been trying for a baby for years. Amanda heard about my situation from a mutual friend. She reached out, offered a deal. They'd raise the baby as theirs, pay for my studies abroad, and no one would ever know. The floor dropped out from under me. Chris, my son. Part of this deception, keeping me in the dark for 16 years. They convinced me it was for the best, for everyone, for the baby to have a real family, for me to escape, for them to finally be parents. And you just gave away your daughter? Jessica's eyes met mine, brimming with fresh tears. It wasn't simple, Aunt Susan. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I spent the entire pregnancy hidden at Amanda's parents' country house. When Mia was born, when I put her in Amanda's arms, a piece of me died right then. I sat, stunned, letting the raw confession wash over me. So many years. So many lies. Why is Mia learning this now? Jessica swiped at her tears with the back of her hand. She wasn't supposed to. The plan was to tell her at 18. But a few months ago, she had a school project on blood types. She found out her type didn't match Chris's or Amanda's. And she contacted you? Yes. Found me on social media. Started sending messages, asking questions. I panicked, told Amanda, and then everything exploded. The image of Mia's phone, the glowing message, flashed in my mind. Don't tell anyone I'm your real mom. It's not time yet. Are you in contact with her now? Yes, secretly. Amanda forbid it, said I was confusing the girl. But Mia keeps reaching out. She's furious, Aunt Susan, with all of us. Even me, who knew nothing, especially you. That hit me like a gut punch. Why? Because you were the only one she ever trusted, completely. When she found out, she felt her whole life was a lie, that everyone she loved had betrayed her, including you. But I didn't know anything. She thinks you did, that everyone was in on it, part of the conspiracy. My heart ached, a deep, bruising pain. How could I reach a wounded teenager who believed I was part of the scheme? How could I ever hope to win back her trust? What have you told her, Jessica? The truth. That you didn't know. That your love for her was always real. But she's a mess. Confused. Angry. She needs time. After Jessica left, I sat on the porch for hours. Her words looping in my head. A sharp, vivid memory surfaced. Mia, 8 years old, right here on this porch. Her small face tilted up at me, puzzling over her reflection in our family. Grandma, why don't I have brown eyes like Mom and Dad? Because you're special, my love, I'd said, brushing her hair back. Sometimes genetics just skip a generation. I'd offered it so easily, so naturally, without a flicker of doubt. How many other whispers of truth had I dismissed? How many clues had I ignored? 3 days later, as I tended my garden, a car pulled up. Chris's. My son climbed out, lingering by the gate, as if unsure of his right to enter. Come in, Chris, I called, my voice steady. This is still your home. He walked towards me, each step heavy. He looked years older, weeks of torment etched onto his face. Mom, You lied to me. I cut him off, the words sharp. For 16 years. About something as fundamental as my own granddaughter. It wasn't my idea, he mumbled. Amanda insisted. And you just let her? You let me pour my life into Mia, believing a lie? Never gave me a chance to help Jessica, to understand. We were afraid you wouldn't approve, that you'd tell people. What kind of monster do you think I am, Chris? You think I'd expose any of you? Jessica? Or worse, Mia herself? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Amanda was convinced you'd tell Mia, that you couldn't keep a secret that big. And now? My voice tightened with fury. Now Mia's found out the worst possible way. She's broken, confused. She sees me as part of your lie. It's complicated, Mom. Amanda's trying to control the narrative. Control! My voice ratcheted up, sharp with disbelief. Control? We're talking about a child's life, Chris. Her feelings. I know. You think I don't know? I'm trapped. Between Amanda's need for appearances, Jessica wanting her daughter back, Mia hating all of us, and you. And me what, Chris? And you being the one Mia actually loved, trusted. That always bothered Amanda. The truth hung between us, thick and suffocating. Amanda, she was jealous of my bond with Mia. From the start, he confessed, defeated. She wanted to be Mia's only mother. But you were always there. Her first steps, first words, every school play, every recital. Mia always ran to you first with her news. So that's why Amanda always kept me at arm's length? The reason for that ridiculous legal letter? Chris nodded, looking utterly broken. She's terrified of losing Mia to Jessica. and she thinks you'll make it happen. What I want is what's best for my granddaughter, Chris. Blood or not, she is my granddaughter. Always has been. Always will be. I know, Mom. Deep down, I always did. The silence stretched, heavy with 16 years of unspoken truths. Can I see her? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Can I talk to Mia? She doesn't want to see anyone right now. She's in therapy, trying to process everything. Just tell her I'm here, I pleaded. Tell her I love her, no matter what. Chris promised he would, but I walked away from that conversation with a heart heavier than ever. The chasm between Mia and me now felt impassable. 2 weeks crawled by. Silence. No calls, no texts. I tried to force normalcy. Thursday knitting, Tuesday volunteering, my evening shows. But every thought, every quiet moment circled back to Mia. One Saturday afternoon, sifting through old family albums, I found it. A small, worn diary Mia had kept at my house during her weekend stays. She must have been 10 when she started it. I opened it carefully, a strange invasiveness in the act, even after all these years. The first entry brought a fragile smile. Dear Diary, today Grandma Susan taught me how to make chocolate chip cookies. We made such a mess in the kitchen. She said sometimes the best recipes are the messiest. I don't think she was just talking about cookies. I turned the pages, reading the voice of a Mia who no longer existed. Innocent, trusting, full of simple love. My heart ached for that little girl, for the easy world where a stained dress was her greatest woe, and her grandma, her undisputed haven. I remembered that day vividly. Amanda, probably frayed from work, the constant facade. And Mia, sensitive as a bell, absorbing it all. But I'd known, just from the slumped shoulders, the faint puffiness around her eyes. It was our silent language, a bond that needed no words. How many times had I simply known what she needed? A quiet hug, a shared silence, another batch of those cookies. It was pure instinct, maternal in its depth. Sometimes a grandma just knows. Today, Mom got mad at me because I stained my new dress. I cried hidden in the bathroom. When I got to Grandma's house, she knew I'd been crying just by looking at me. How does she always know? Another entry, a small child's poignant observation, hit me squarely in the gut. Not a judgment against Chris, but a stark, undeniable truth. He was a good father, always had been. But he was also a busy man, consumed by work, by the silent pressures of providing. I'd seen it. Mia's slumped shoulders when game night was cancelled. The faint, hopeful flicker when he'd promised to make it up. And I'd always tried to be there, to fill that small, aching void. To be the one never too busy for one more story, one more game, one more secret whispered into a willing ear. Dad's always busy. He promises he'll play video games with me. But there's always a meeting or something important. Grandma's never too busy for me. The next, a tiny crumpled page, described a primal fear I'd comforted her through countless times. Thunderstorms, rolling in like angry giants, shaking the house, sending Mia scrambling into my bed, tiny fingers clutching my nightgown. I'd lie there, holding her close, humming old lullabies, feeling the frantic thump of her little heart against my chest. I never slept, just held her until the storm passed, and her breathing evened out. To think she felt that security, that fierce, unconditional presence, even in her sleep. It was overwhelming. I had a horrible nightmare. I dreamed Grandma Susan was leaving and leaving me alone. When I woke up, she was sitting on the edge of my bed holding my hand, as if she knew I needed her. even in my sleep. On the last written page, I stopped breathing. Sometimes I wonder if Grandma Susan is my real mom. She understands me better than anyone. I know it's silly because she's my grandma, but I wish she was my mom. I closed the diary, my heart hammering against my ribs. Mia had always known, always felt the difference in her family, even without a name for it. And somehow she'd forged a connection with me that defied blood, defied logic. In that instant, a cold resolve settled over me. I wouldn't wait for Chris or Amanda to grant me permission to see my granddaughter. I wouldn't let petty rules or ancient resentments keep me from Mia. Not when she needed unconditional love most. I picked up the phone. Not Chris's number, Jessica's. "Aunt Susan?" She answered, clearly startled. "Jessica, I need your help. I need to talk to Mia." The mall buzzed, a chaotic symphony of Sunday afternoon shoppers. I sat on the bench by the fountain, exactly where Jessica had said to wait, my heart thrumming a frantic rhythm. At 3 o'clock sharp, Mia appeared. She looked different, her long hair gone, replaced by a sharp, shoulder-length cut. Dressed in dark, serious clothes that belied her 16 years, she scanned the crowd, a hunted look in her eyes. When she saw me, she froze. For a terrifying second, I thought she'd bolt. But then slowly she began to walk towards me. "Hi," she said, her voice flat as she sat beside me, maintaining a careful distance. "Thank you for coming." I managed, fighting the overwhelming urge to pull her into a hug. "Jessica said it was important." "It is important. You're important to me, Mia." She stared down at her hands, avoiding my gaze. "Why didn't you ever tell me? You knew, didn't you?" "No, Mia. I swear to you I didn't know. I found out the same day you told me I was nobody to you." Her eyes finally met mine, searching my face for any hint of a lie. "How?" "A message on your phone, from Jessica. And you read my messages?" Her voice, sharp with indignation. "Not on purpose. Your phone fell. The screen lit up. But that's not the point, Mia. The point is, I didn't know. Never knew Jessica was your biological mother." "And if you had, would you have treated me differently?" The question, so raw, caught me off guard. "Of course not. You're my granddaughter, Mia. In my heart, in my soul. Nothing could ever change that. But I'm not your real granddaughter. I don't have your blood." "Blood?" I shook my head, a slow, deliberate movement. "Blood's just red liquid in veins. Family is so much more. It's the stories we share, the cookies we baked, the nights you slept over because you were scared of thunderstorms." Her eyes welled, but she fought back the tears. "Everyone lied. My whole life's a lie." "Not everything, Mia. The love I feel for you, that was never a lie. Every moment we shared, every single one, was real." "But you're not my grandma." "Yes, I am. Maybe not by biology, but I'm your grandma in every way that counts." We sat in quiet for a few beats, watching the fountain's water cascade. "I found your old diary," I finally said. "The one you kept at my house." She flushed faintly. "You read it?" "I did. And you know what I found? That we always had something special. You felt it too, didn't you?" Mia nodded, almost imperceptibly. "On the last page, you wrote that sometimes you wished I was your mom. Remember?" "Vaguely," she murmured. "Mia, I can't change the past. Can't undo the lies others told. But I can promise you this. From now on, I will always be honest. And my love for you, it was never a lie." She drew a ragged breath, wrestling with her emotions. "I'm so confused, Grandma. I don't know who I am anymore." Grandma. She'd called me Grandma again. A tide of hope rushed through me. You're Mia, the smart, sensitive, fierce girl I've always known. Your essence hasn't changed. You've just unearthed more of your story. But what about Jessica and Amanda? Who's my real mom? Both in different ways. Jessica gave you life. Amanda raised you. And they both love you, each in their own way. And me? Me? I smiled through the tears now freely falling. I'm your Grandma Susan, the one who will always be here for you, no matter what. Slowly, tentatively, like testing an unknown shore, Mia leaned in and rested her head on my shoulder. It wasn't a full embrace, but it was a fragile, precious start. I'm so scared, she whispered. Of what, my love? Of choosing. Of hurting someone. Of not knowing how to be with Jessica. With Mom Amanda. You don't have to choose, Mia. This isn't a competition. You can have all of us in your life in different ways. Mom Amanda doesn't want me to see Jessica. Or you. Amanda's scared. Scared of losing you. In time, she'll understand your heart is vast enough for all of us. We stayed that way for a long moment, simply being. When we finally pulled apart, Mia seemed lighter, as if a heavy cloak had been lifted. I have to go. Told Mom I was meeting school friends. I understand, but can we do this again? She hesitated, then a small nod. I'd like that. As I watched her walk away, a bittersweet blend of relief and apprehension washed over me. This was just the genesis of a long, arduous journey of reconciliation. More difficult conversations, more tears, more revelations lay ahead. But for the first time in weeks, I felt a fragile, undeniable hope. The subsequent months were a tempestuous navigation. Mia and I met regularly, always in secret, at the mall, the park. Slowly, brick by painstaking brick, we rebuilt our relationship, now founded on truth. Jessica, too, became a more tangible presence in our lives. At first, a sharp pang of jealousy would strike when Mia spoke of her with bright enthusiasm. But I quickly realized it wasn't a zero-sum game. Each of us held a distinct, vital role in Mia's evolving world. The tension with Amanda, however, remained a taut wire. Chris confided she'd discovered our clandestine meetings, her fury a burning fuse. Lawsuits, a threat to move towns, anything to sever Mia from Jessica and me. It was Mia who finally seized control. One Sunday evening, she summoned us all for dinner at my house. Chris, Amanda, Jessica, and me. No more secrets, she declared, her voice clear and steady as we sat in uncomfortable silence around the table. No more fighting. You are all my family. In different ways, yes, but equally important. Amanda's lips thinned, a protest forming, but Mia pressed on. Mom. She looked directly at Amanda, her gaze unwavering. You raised me. You gave me a home. You loved me from day one. That will never change. She turned to Jessica. You gave me life. You made an impossibly difficult choice when you were so young, always thinking of my well-being. I want to know you, to understand my story. Then, her eyes found mine. Grandma Susan, you have always been there, through everything. My best friend, my confidant. Finally, to Chris. Dad, you're the one constant. You've always been exactly who you said you were. My dad, who loves me unconditionally. Tears flowed that night. Harsh words were spoken. Old wounds ripped open. Amanda finally choked out her jealousy, her constant, suffocating fear of losing Mia. Jessica confessed the crushing weight of her guilt, the years of silent anguish. Chris, his shoulders slumping, begged forgiveness for his cowardice, for not facing the truth sooner. And me. I spoke of love. How Mia had filled the gaping void Robert left behind. How every moment with her was a sacred gift, never taken for granted. We didn't solve everything that night. Some scars ran too deep for a single conversation to erase. But the tears that fell, for the first time, felt cleansing, not destructive. We talked late into the night, the remnants of our pot roast growing cold, yet the air felt lighter, breathable. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. Old habits, old hurts, they linger like persistent shadows. But something fundamental, something profoundly healing, shifted in that room. A space opened for raw truth, for a fragile, honest kind of love that had been starved for far too long. Mia hadn't forced a resolution, not truly. She simply laid bare the truth of her heart, her fierce yearning for all of us, and in doing so, she gave us all permission to find our own. Jessica, usually so withdrawn, shared her pain, her deep regret for the impossible choices of a scared young woman, her desperate need to protect Mia, even if it meant stepping back. Amanda, after her initial fury, listened, truly listened. And I finally felt like I could draw a full breath. The knot in my chest, a tight, painful fist for months, began to unravel. The pot roast might have been dry, the apple pie a little too sweet, but it was the most nourishing meal we'd had in years. Not for the food, but for the honesty served alongside it. A bitter pill, yes, but one that dissolved into a balm. We were not, and would never be, a perfect family. The cracks would remain, a testament to the storms we'd weathered. But we were at last, an honest one. Bound not just by blood or shared history, but by the messy, beautiful work of forgiveness, understanding, and the relentless choice to love. It took time, of course, many more months of tentative steps forward, and sometimes a step back. Amanda and I still had our moments, old patterns dying hard. But the sharp edge of hostility softened into a weary understanding, a fragile respect. Jessica found her quiet, consistent place in Mia's life, a new branch on our ever-growing family tree. And Mia? She didn't just survive, she blossomed. More confident in who she was, embracing her unique, layered story, her multifaceted heritage, her three mothers, Jessica, who gave her life, Amanda, who raised her with a fiercely protective love, and me, who loved her with the boundless heart of a grandmother, and her unwavering father, Chris. She finally understood that love isn't finite, it expands. As for me, the aching loneliness that had shadowed my days began to recede. I was simply Susan, grandmother, mother. And in the complex, beautiful tapestry that was our family, I realized my thread was not only woven in, but absolutely essential. Because sometimes, the strongest ties aren't the ones you're born with, but the ones you choose to mend, knot by knot, with love and a whole lot of truth. Today, a year after that dinner, we're all here again. It's Mia's 17th birthday. Amanda still has her moments of insecurity, but she's learning to share. Jessica has settled into her role, a kind of older sister to Mia. Chris seems to breathe easier, as if a monumental weight has finally been lifted. And Mia, she is flourishing, more grounded in who she is, wrapped in the embrace of a family that loves her in myriad beautiful ways. As the chorus of "Happy Birthday" fills the room, I watch my granddaughter blow out her candles. Her eyes find mine across the flickering light, and she smiles. That radiant, familiar smile that has always been my sunshine. Later, after most of the guests have dispersed, Mia pulls me to a quiet pocket of the garden. "I have something for you, Grandma," She hands me a small package, wrapped in blue, my favorite color. Inside, a silver heart pendant, a necklace. "Open it," she prompts. Within the heart, a tiny photo. Us, taken recently, locked in a hug, laughing into the lens. "To replace the one you gave me last year," she explains softly. "The one I threw away." Tears well, blurring my vision as I fasten the clasp. "It's perfect, Mia." "You know what I learned this past year, Grandma?" She gazes up at the vast, star-dusted sky. "Family isn't just about sharing blood. It's about sharing your soul." I pull my granddaughter, yes, my granddaughter, into a fierce embrace, offering a silent prayer of gratitude for every pain and every joy that brought us to this moment. For the lies that, once shattered, created space for a truth far more profound. For every lost moment that amplified the preciousness of those we now shared. Because in the end, I found it. True love needs no ties of blood to exist. It simply is. Resilient as an ancient oak, flexible as a reed in the wind, capable of weathering storms, secrets, and even the most brutal of revelations. And as I watch Mia drift back towards the laughter, back to her family, all her family, I know that no matter what the future holds, our bond will remain. Not because of shared genes, but because we choose, every single day, to love each other. And in the end, that choice, that's what truly defines a family.